Is it bright sunny at 5 a.m.?
Okay, we're going to wait a couple of minutes to let people join in. In the meantime, so we're going to use the chat throughout the session. Okay, if you've never used Zoom, it's at the bottom. It's written right here. You click on it, chat, and we can start by writing a bit of information about ourselves, like name, where we're joining from, ESP if you want, if you need Spanish interpretation, and if you want to share what you are hoping for, what are your expectations if you have any. So that's in the chat, and we invite you to write something down. Where in the world are you joining from? Yeah. There's Natesh joining now. Admirer of David Penberg. Who's that mysterious David Penberg? I wonder. Tom is joining. Hi, Tom. Welcome. People from New Mexico, Belgium, Spain, Argentina,
Every day there's like a little.
South Dakota, New York.
I've been so lucky with being surrounded with.
Superb. Here. So just before we get started, remember that this session is being recorded. So if you prefer not to appear, you can turn your video off. Okay. Right, more people are joining here. And okay, lovely.
News on, so your name is here. That's all that matters. But you can sit here and watch on screen.
Yes. So, okay. I'm going to ask something. We are going to take a little snapshot before we forget. Okay, so the idea is to use this picture for LinkedIn for a post. If you don't want to appear, you can turn your camera off, and if not, you can smile or whatever you want. Okay, so there. Are we ready? Yes, beautiful smiles, lovely people. Done, perfect. Thank you. A question. Any of you would need Spanish interpretation? No? No one? No, okay. So you see, Juan, I think it's sorted. Okay, no Spanish interpretation. Great. Right. So let's get started. How about the organizer presenting ourselves very briefly? Juan, would you like to start?
Yes, I could not mute myself. Thank you, Emmanuel. I am Juan Mora. I am the Executive Director of the Center for Artistry and Scholarship, and I'm currently in Buenos Aires, Argentina, but I spend my time between Boston, North Carolina, and Argentina.
Thank you, Juan.
I'm John Moscow. I'm co-executive director of Ethics in Education Network and co-host of our podcast, Ethical Schools. And I'm in Teaneck, New Jersey.
Okay.
And I'm Amy Halpern-Laff. I co-direct Ethics in Education Network with John, also co-host the podcast Ethical Schools, and I'm in the Upper West Side of New York City.
Morning. I am Shirley Edwards, and I am the co-chair of Ethics in Education Network Incorporated, and I am between New York and McGill.
I'm David Penberg, and I reside in the Hudson Valley of upstate New York, and I'm an academic advisor for the Augusta International Foundation.
Thank you, David. And I'm Emmanuel. I'm joining from Asturias, north of Spain, and I work for the organization called Thinking with You. Okay, so Amy, why don't you tell us a bit about the why and the what of this session?
You know, I'm going to ask you to cover that for me, please. I'm having a little technical issue here.
Absolutely. Okay. Juan, you want to go?
Emmanuel, I'll go. So to start us all out, as we come together this morning, we also want to honor and recognize all the teachers of the world in urban, rural, and semi-urban places for all the immense challenges that they face on a daily basis, as well as to acknowledge the millions of children and their families who subsist in broken societies facing unimaginable and unconscionable conditions of famine, war, persecution, and climate change. They too are present this morning during this salon.
Thank you, Juan. Well, let's reconnect with the first session where which grounded us in a shared insight. Learning only comes alive through relationship with place, nature, and one another. Through lived example from Argentina with Juan Mora y Araujo, director of the Center for Artistry and Scholarship, and also from India with Ramji Raghavan, the founder of Agastya International Foundation, we saw how education shifts when it is rooted in real context, reciprocity, and trust rather than content delivery. So the second session builds on that foundation by entering those same principles through story, deepening the inquiry and connecting awareness to lived, shared meaning.
For our second salon on nature, place, and education, we bring together three distinct yet overlapping perspectives through the voices of Sherry Johnson, Deepak Ramola, and Charlotte Hankin, a Native American perspective, one from South India, and that of nature itself, reflected in the research Charlotte is conducting in Bali at the Green School. All three approach storytelling as a way of amplifying ancient traditions, using story as an entry point into our shared exploration of nature, place, and the purpose of education.
Thank you, John. So I'd like to share a short excerpt from Robin Wall Kimmerer's Braiding Sweetgrass, a masterpiece that each of us should be reading. But before I do, as a way of framing our conversation and dialogue today, I just wanted to echo something that Juan shared yesterday in a post in terms of reflecting about our relationship to the natural world. And he said something to the extent that to understand and to shift our sense of how we relate to nature, that we have to be in relationship to it to create that sense of belonging and connectedness. But that, as we all know, historically, we have left nature out of our learning environment. We've controlled it. We've protected ourselves from it. We've objectified ourselves. And for those of us who spend times in schools, there's a conspicuous absence of the natural world. And that what we need to do more than anything is that in order to create a relationship with nature, you have to get to know it. So that we have to be intentional as educators in building relationships that are reciprocal and respectful. Robin Wall Kimmerer. I once knew and loved a man who lived most of his life in the city. But when he was dragged off to the ocean or the woods, he seemed to enjoy it well enough, as long as he could find an internet connection. He had lived in a lot of places, so I asked him where he found his greatest sense of place. He didn't understand the expression. I explained, I wanted to know where he felt most nurtured and supported. What's the place that you understand best, that you know best and knows you in return? He didn't take too long to answer. My car, he said. In my car. It gives me everything I need just the way I like it, my favorite music, seat position, fully adjustable, automatic mirrors, 2 cup holders. I'm safe, and it always gets me to where I want to go. Years later, he tried to kill himself in his car. He never grew a relationship with the land, choosing instead the splendid isolation of technology. And I wonder if much the same that ails our society stems from the fact that we've allowed ourselves to be cut off from that love of and from the land, which is medicine for broken land and empty hearts.
Thank you, David. Thank you very much for sharing this text. Now, let's do a little checking icebreaker. Okay, we already invited you to share where you're from in the chat, and now the idea is where I'm listening from. So we're going to ask you to do 2 things. First, you can write it down in the chat, or if you want to share out loud, that's perfectly fine. Think about one place you're arriving from. It could be a physical place, an emotional one, or a symbolic one. You choose which place you are arriving from, physical, emotional, or symbolic. And then the idea is to accompany this place with one question. One question that very place, raises for you about education or nature. And you can use metaphor. Okay? So I'm going to give you an example. Personally, my place would be a forest path. And the question I've chosen is the following. What would students learn if the path wasn't marked in advance? Okay, so it's just an example. You can use a metaphor. There's no right or wrong answer, whatever comes to you. A place and a question that place raises for you about education or nature, or education and nature. And perhaps what David has just read us inspired you somehow. Thank you, Charles. There's places in Dakina, and the question is, how can I be of service now? Beautiful question. Whereas David is in the kitchen. Yeah? How do we learn how to nurture ourselves again to make well-being the center of learning? Beautiful. Thank you. Juan is arriving from the land of photographs. I organized all my childhood photographs yesterday. The question is, how does education help us navigate through the labyrinth of time so that we can be ever so present right now? Beautiful, yeah. So yes, we invite you to take notes. You can share it now in the chat a bit later. That's fine. Place a little. Arrive from the good rest. Just here. Home and safe, pushing forward, taking time for me. Education is the path out of poverty. Thank you very much. Okay, so keep on writing, keep on sharing here. And yes, David,
Okay,
why don't
thank you.
we move on?
Thank you, Emmanuel. So before we listen to our guests, I think it's important to know that we shared with them 3 guiding questions. And those guiding questions you'll find in the chat, I believe. And distilled those 3 questions to the following, and I'll read it out loud. What kinds of learning invite children and teachers into direct relationships with living beings and their habitats? Relationships that cultivate empathy, reciprocity, and a sense of the worth of all living things. So with that, I asked each of our speakers from their own particular perspective to try to respond to that and the guiding questions from the lens of stories, particularly because we know that storytelling is a bridge between ancient traditions, and they're also entry points into our shared exploration and understanding of nature, place, and the purpose of education. So one housekeeping note, please write your questions, responses in the chat or in a notebook that you have next to you. I think we're in for a splendid treat. Sherry, to you.
All right. Here's my struggle doing the PowerPoint. So
Deep breath.
share my screen. Okay.
We can see it.
Okay. That's good. Whoops. It's gone. Do you see it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I just want to take a few moments and say thank you for the invite this morning. I do have my dogs locked in the back room, so hopefully we can get through this short time, and then it won't be quite so stressful for me without having them. I have 3 little yappers, but I come come to you really to just share a few things with you and listen and be a part of the group. And I am Native American, and I am the education director, and I'll go ahead and formally weave through some of my introduction there. Dr. Sherry Johnson and Makiapie Tawachi Washtewe Demia. That's who I am. My grandfather named me. And so I'll start off with those stories right away. My grandfather named me, and he named me the woman that uses her brain to think. It's that thinking part to help people. And so he named me Tawachi Washtewi. So in a good way, I come from the Eastman Tawahe, meaning family. My ate with my father is Wayne Eastman. He's no longer here. I have my Ina is Lois Farms, and so come from a long. My grandmother passed on a few years ago, so I was lucky to have her, and she was like 7 days shy of 110. So a lot of history there. I am. As you can see, I have a picture up there, and that's my office. My office door is right there. I come to you from the Lake Traverse Indian Reservation in northeast corner of South Dakota in the USA. I am Sisseton-Wahpeton Oyate Hamataha. I come from the people of the Sisseton and Wahpeton lands. We are the Plains Indians from the Dakota Nation, so I help a little bit there. That from my lens, I have a tribal education lens. I was a teacher for 10 years, mostly middle school science instruction, 15 years as a superintendent at a school, and now 12 years I have been the education director. So my discussion today is from that education lens. This is our flag. It represents our reservation, our Lake Traverse Indian Reservation. And on there, you can see the 7 teepees. Those are our 7 political districts of our tribe. And they are geographically zoned there when they were putting the Native people on reservations. They stood at a point in the lands of South Dakota, stood at a point and spread their arms in a V, and they said, "These lands are yours." And that's how our reservation became that triangle shaped. We are a treaty tribe, so not all tribes are actually treaty tribes. And so for us, that's huge to have that government to government relationship where sovereignty is huge for us. We're asserting our sovereignty, but sometimes in this day and age right now, it's just kind of okay to be laying low. So, really our whole world was experiential. We experienced everything, and it's always through stories. When they asked me about this, I thought about, what stories we would have and what we would do. And as a teacher and reflecting back on how I use that to go to teach. And, we have in our world, education world, we have education standards that are mandated. And so you're figuring out how your instruction, your teaching goals can really match what needs to be taught. Our histories are rich histories, and they're place-based. Got to think about that because, our reservation wasn't always here. Some of our people were actually in Minnesota and pushed. And then in this Damakota, that I am Dakota, and we were pushed up we've got pockets of Dakota people that are up in Canada, in Spirit Lake, across South Dakota, up in North Dakota. So our experiences, our stories are a little bit different on occasion, but that's okay. There are stories. Our ceremonies are really in 7 directions. So if you think about that 7, so the term place-based is more appropriate for us. What are our 4 directions and what are the other 3 directions? Think about that. And make that connections. Land is really physical, but it's also spiritual. The Indigenous perspective only helps expand your worldview if you truly listen with mind, body, and soul. So, as Native people and as instructors and knowledge carriers, we go out and we dig medicines, we offer tobacco and those prayers and give thanks to the medicine that we are about to gather our harvest, that it will do what it needs to do and help our bodies be as healthy as we can be. So offering that thanks to all these directions, the 7 directions. And as Indigenous people, we lived in harmony of the land and we took care of it. And as education, as teaching, we have to get back to that place-based and respectful teaching. And think about those 7 directions, teaching in those ways. Our education system slid way far to one side when we had No Child Left Behind. And so much rigor on math and reading instruction that we lost this part of it. And so I'm very happy that we are coming back to that. So our teachers when we work with our teachers, they work hard at including in that inclusion of our own narrative, our Native narrative. but they are also creating place-based teaching lessons, which brings us to our Grow Your Own Teachers. So we are cultivating our own teachers from our community who best tell our story. So, and I want to really talk about one of the stories as an instance. When you go through South Dakota, Minnesota, and North Dakota, you see all these names of places, and they're Dakota, and some are Ojibwe, Chippewa, things like that. But here's a story about Tokanua. This is one of our schools in Tokanua-Wayawapi. It's the place where they go to learn, and it's really Enemy Swim Day School. And it's named after a local lake. The lake is Enemy Swim. The school derives its name from a legend. So one day there was a local battle between the Dakota and the rivals. And some of the stories say it was a Ojibwe. Some of the stories will say different people. But it all goes back to the Dakota forced their attackers to swim to the safety of an island in the lake. And so thus the name. And many of the roads and areas of our area have indigenous names. So, and then just to leave with one more story is another place-based story. Is about the beautiful woman that all the young men vied for, but she waited for one young man, and he was traveling far away. And so the local young men were getting restless. They wanted her to choose, and they were bothering around about her making that selection. And finally, she just said she would choose the one who could throw the rock the furthest in the lake. And they tried over and over again. And pretty soon there was a mound of rocks, and pretty soon it was forming a little island out there. And they couldn't tell which one was the furthest. And then they realized that she probably tricked them. And they grew angry, and they took her and they put her on the island out in the middle. Well, they figured that she would be out there and she would choose one of them because there's no food or no water. Well, a pelican came by and saw what was going on. So every day he would feed her fish and berries. He'd bring fish and berries to her. And so eventually the men are all still waited, but her one that she was waiting for came back. And he saw what was going on. He took her from the island there. And that island became known as Lake Compesca, and that's another Dakota word. And there's also Lake Pelican up there, and they all have stories about this one going through. So we learn the history through stories, but we also learn through our life ways, our lessons. And so with that, I'll leave that story with you and turn the time over to the next speaker. I want to thank you for allowing me in the space with you all on this beautiful Saturday morning. The sun is now up. I am waiting to, after this is done, I'm going to go back to the ice castle and go fishing with my husband. So thank you all.
Sherry, thank you very much. Maybe you can let the dogs out now.
I know.
So to our next speaker, Deepak, to you.
Thank you, David, and thank you, Sherry, for sharing your beautiful stories. Such an honor to be here, everyone. Lovely to meet you. And because the intention and the anchoring is in stories, let me start with one too. My grandmother, when she was married, which was very early, around the age of 13, on the first week in her life, in her new family's home, her father-in-law performed a ritual that many men would perform when a new bride would enter home. And the ritual was they would take the young bride out to the courtyard and point to the mango trees that were growing. And the promise of the ritual was that this young bride, this young custodian of this new home, would never sell the mangoes and never stop anyone from plucking it. It was for the community. The reason for that was that my grandmother shared with me is that in Indian mythology and in the cultural essence of being, mangoes, she believed, were fruits that were created to remind men of the debt they owe to womanhood. And the mango, in the shape and its essence, represented the a woman's breast. And before anyone could celebrate the harvest, every summer season, young boys and men were gathered together and were offered the first mango of the season, and they had to think which woman in the community they want to offer their gratitude to. I love that story because it talks about feminism from the metaphor of the mango. And my grandmother, who grew up in 1940s and 1950s and luckily is still with us, uses that as her anchor and her compass to navigate the world we live in. Every summer season, she said, she was able to use that mango to educate her boys about not only women, but the natural world and what it symbolizes. The harvest was the lesson, the land was the teacher, and these relationships that we negotiated with each other were very much rooted in the gratitude of that large classroom and were practiced at the kitchen table, in the field, in the rhythm of the seasons. We have to learn, as my grandmother say, and relearn over and over again with every changing season that nature isn't something you go out and experience on a holiday. It is who you are, where you are. And it is in that flavor of the mango, it is in the dice of that papaya, it is in plucking that strawberry that we realize we are carrying all of these stories and these relationships and these metaphors that nature affords us. From the same region, there's a proverb in Garhwali, the language spoken by my people in the foothills of the Himalayas and in the upper regions of the Himalayas. And the proverb is, Jab pani ka dhara aag lagdi to bujhauni kina, which means when water catches fire, what will you douse it down with? And what happens when the thing that was meant to save you becomes the crisis itself? I think we are living that proverb now. Our rivers are polluted. Our forests are drowning in smoke. Our cities are drowning in smoke. The systems we have built to protect us are threatening our very survival. But the striking part in that proverb, in that packed wisdom, is that our ancestors saw this coming. They encoded ecological wisdom into language, into ritual, into everyday life. Because culture and ecology were never meant to be separate. The songs we sang, the gods we worshipped, the land we prayed to, the way we organized our lives, its functionality and its sentimentality all grew from the soil beneath our feet and the trees towering over us. And so the reason of our becoming is very much present around us. We lend ourselves and we borrow from the ecology that we call our culture. For the 17 years that we've been running Project Fuel, my team and I have been documenting life lessons of ordinary people, fishermen, midwives, sex workers, street vendors, farmers, refugees, people who never went to a formal university, but who carry knowledge that universities don't recognize. It's the knowledge of lived experience. And so what we do at the center of our work in Project Fuel is honoring the wisdom, the practical wisdom of everyday people. And in our investigation, in our research, we have recognized that nature is a language that people use. My grandmother used patience, not just as an idea or a virtue, but pointed to the water carving stone. It wasn't her way of being poetic. It was her being of showing where patience lives tangibly. And she was teaching me to see these relationships in this intergenerational contractual way that was both symbolic and layered and credible. If we want our children to learn this way, we have to create something more specific in our schools, in our learning ecosystem. We have to systemically build space. And space not just as a notion of a room or a structure, which unfortunately what it has become, codified as in the modern world. It's like we need a new space, which means basically we need a new lab and a new building and an air-conditioned auditorium. But the Sanskrit word for it is Brahmand. It is believed in the Indian mythical, universe that Lord Brahma, from whose name Brahmand is derived, is the creator of the world. And Brahma, before creating the world, had to create something more. In the Western world, the word Brahmand often translates to the universe. But in Sanskrit, it actually means space, which means before any creation to take place, you have to create the space in which that creation exists. So that if there were asteroids colliding, if there was a big bang, the universe had the space to evolve and turn the big ship on a small deck. And there was room for people to wonder and imagine and create newer possibilities. We are so busy filling the curriculums, the lives of our children with knowledge, with more information. And it is in this space that we will transition from just building our children's future towards a living and evolve towards building a life. We need to create conditions where it is not only new knowledge that greets them, it is the wisdom of the old world and it is the wisdom of their own lives. I want to share a few examples with you of the work we've been doing, and I want to anchor that in the work of the British anthropologist Tim Ingold. Tim Ingold beautifully mentions that the idea of conquering a new future, advancing towards the unknown is a very modern idea. It is really a 50, 60-year-old idea of we are going to be the first people unleashing the possibility of what the newness is. The truth is, for the longest time in history, since the beginning of civilization, the idea was we have ancestors, and those ancestors go into the future, and they are the ones leading our path. And that belief system, Tim says, allowed us to have a moral accountability and a cognitive value system that drove us continuously, that we have received this land, this world from someone, and we are going to give it to someone. And that relationship, that accountability, and that sense of ownership with the ancestors, with history, with culture, now has become almost a pop culture thing of the past, not of the future. We believe the future is where we are headed and how we are going to discover it. And I think there has to be a shift to that. When we move into communities, we realize that in our work, so apparently and so visibly, that children inhabit the world in which these stories are not only spoken, but they are experienced. In the state I grew up in and I call home, called Uttarakhand in India, we have a huge migration problem. We have about 1,700 ghost villages, and people have migrated due to economic and climate challenges. The image you see on your screen is of one such village. It's a 600-year-old village where at one point of time, about 200 families lived, but now only 12 were left behind back in 2017 when we collaborated with the village. We started documenting with the 12 families the wisdom of their own culture, but also tracing the 200 families wherever they lived in the world. We conducted deep ethnographies and we brought those stories back to the village. And then with the children and the adults, we trained them as artists and ethnographers of these stories and hand painted these stories on the walls of these abandoned homes.
Mm-hmm.
These villages became one of the world's first village of life lessons. You could walk from any corridor to any corridor, any alley to any lane, and read the stories of the people. This was also done to honor the space, which people have only seen in the news as a ghost village. These are places and lands of 600-year-old lives lived together. And we wanted to honor that relationship with ecology. The image you see on your screen is a beautiful folk tale and a ritual that this village practices. People in this village, when it hasn't rained for a long time, I was told, walk up to the temple in the village and pray for several days from the gods to grant and give them rain. I asked them, has there ever been a time that the god didn't listen and you didn't get the rain? And this old woman in the village says, oh, there was one time. And I said, so what happened? And she said, oh, we stayed there. And there's a small stone that covers the idol of the god. We removed the stone and we sort of fought with God and said, now you get scorched in the sun as much as we are. And it made me chuckle because that relationship tells us that they are not fearful of God or religion or any entity they call their own. It is this friendship that they have. And she also said that we fight, we ask for gifts because we feel this land is our family and we have to care for our family. We don't live outside of it, we live inside of it and in relation with it. That small anecdote got painted onto that wall of people singing and, calling the clouds home and singing. And it was painted with the kids of the village, in essence, to also remind them of the stories and the practices. Here's another village on the foothills of a glacier called the Pindhari, the majestic glaciers and mountains of the land of Uttarakhand. It's the remotest village, no road, no electricity, no internet. When we first went there, it takes about 3 days to just get to this village, and you cannot hear a car honk for miles. You cannot feel electricity on your cornea for weeks. With the village and the kids, we were able to again turn the village into that form of classroom and celebrate the stories that live in the intangible ways and paint those stories out with the community and the kids. The reason I point to this is because that method has traveled all around the world. This is the Maasai in Tanzania, where we've been working for last 6 years, documenting the wisdom of the Maasai, but not just as an exercise of expression and creativity, but as an exercise to solve on-ground challenges. In fact, these communities, particularly the Maasai, walk 9 hours for water every day. 9 hours. And this is today. So with the community and young children from around the world, these are 2 boys, Roshan and Yuvraj from California, who went to the community with us in 2021. And they have raised about $200,000 with their schools, with their communities to build 500 water harvesting units in the community, saving 15,000 Maasai women and children that 9 hours, strenuous walk. Which brings me to the second point, that we have to start honoring the wisdom of children. When we think about education, when we think about place, when we think about nature, ask yourself, who's the first face that comes to you as the guardian? It's probably someone older. And who comes as the people who it needs to be saved for? It is somebody younger. The truth or the insight rather that our research has shown us, that wisdom is not passed down, it's passed around. And so it is in this collaboration with the young that we have to recognize a new blueprint for the world we want to inhabit. It's the wisdom of these young people in Tanzania. It's the young people in California coming together to solve challenges that we face in the world, primarily because of climate change. It is through this lens when we start looking. The last example I would like to share with you is the space in an urban context. We saw what it looks like in a rural, in a more grassroots landscape. A few years ago, we started a project called the Wisdom Corridor Project. And the project started with the inspiration that when you walk on a school campus, you really see these big, beautiful quotes by inspiring people like Mother Teresa, Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King. Once I stopped a kid to ask them, what does that quote mean to you? And he said, it's really nice, but I have follow-up questions and I cannot ask Mother Teresa. And so he just zoomed past. And it kind of revealed that sometimes the wisdom that we do offer our children is at an arm's distance. It is also further out in rooted in history. We have to make it more contemporary. We have to ask ourselves, what are the stories available to them now? What are the stories available to us now? And it was of the teachers who were only seen as knowledge dispensers of math and science. And I know Sherry was referring this earlier, that this focus on just academic understanding has sort of seeped in. So we train students in this particular project as ethnographers, as data documentarians, as researchers, and they interview their community, their educators, and then create a physical wisdom corridor in their school, which represents the knowledge and the wisdom of the people who live around. And this relationship building, this sense of change and this posturing with the space that we inhabit, not as just a problem making or a problem investigating space, but as a solution space. This is from Pittsburgh. We've been working with about 40 schools over the last 4 years there. And these stories emerge and show what classrooms can look like, because it shows not only this top-down knowledge, but this collaborative constellation knowledge that brings all of us in. And it's only when in this space we learn, can we pay attention to what stories we want to tell. This is from a Iraku community in Babati. The children have never had a children's book. Never had a children's book. And so I told them, but you all love stories, you all tell stories, where do you learn these? And they said, well, we have a ritual that a grandparent or the older person in the house around the fire, as the dinner is being made, has to tell a story every night. And so collaborating with these children and with our friends at an organization called Story Fave, we used AI, where children documented the folk tales of their grandparents. And using AI, we created these physical books that became their stories. And it has continued with other educators in India. We like to believe that we live in a world that is rich with the wisdom of the now, the wisdom of our own people. And it's only when we celebrate that, it's only when we acknowledge it, not maximize it sometimes, but honor it, can we come into being with each other. We can become each other's teachers, not just in the school context, but in the life context. And so I leave you with these three things. The first is we need intergenerational sharing. We need intergenerational wisdom, because only in that exchange will we be able to, not as a token learning, pass on. Elders teach patience, children teach presence, but we are able to cross-pollinate. The second thing is we have to create deep respect for the wisdom of children. We need schools that treat their perspective as necessary, not as cute. They're not inheriting the future. They're already living in it. And the question that keeps me awake at night is, what stories are we leaving behind? What stories are we birthing that our children will come to call their folk tales? Because in 100 years, they will have grandchildren and great-grandchildren. I wonder what they will say. What are the proverbs we create now, how we live, how we protect? The effort has to be collaborative. It has to be mutual. And I invite you, in fact, the latest work that we are doing is called 1 Million Ecological Voices of Women. We're collecting 1 million stories of ecology with school children across India, across the world, of the relationship women have with ecology. And I hope that you all can join and contribute with your wisdom to that. Thank you so much for this invitation, and thank you for listening.
Deepak, thank you so very much. Charlotte, you only now have 30 seconds.
Thank you. So
Hi,
Deepak,
everyone.
thank you so much. Charlotte.
Such great contributions so far, and actually really overlapping so beautifully with some of the things that I'm going to speak to. It's worth noting that I am not speaking as an Indigenous person to the place of my research. I'm British. I live in Bali. I'm an international educator, consultant, and I am researching with the University of Bath in the UK. And so what I want to share with you is some of my PhD research. So what I will share is a little bit more academic, which has some beautiful overlaps, but hopefully something a bit different too. All right, I'm just going to share my screen then. Okay, we try and make this a bit more full screen, a bit bigger. So this is my place. This is Bali. This is where I live. I've lived here for 3 years. You can see from these images that it is a beautifully vibrant and abundant place. This is an international school in a jungle in Bali. And my PhD research is exploring the relationships between animals and children in international schools. And we've got dogs, cats, butterflies. It would be completely normal for a gecko to land on your desk in the middle of your maths lesson. There are no walls, there are no windows or doors. There are bamboo structures in a monsoon jungle. So when it rains, my goodness, it rains, and you can't do a lot, you can't hear a lot. It is a full-bodied sensory experience learning in this particular place. And I've been in education for 25 years now. I've taught from 4-year-olds to 18-year-olds. I've also been involved in lots of professional development of teachers. And I was kind of wanting to give up, I must say, on the profession. And I said to my husband, there's only a couple of schools in the world that I would want to work in. And this was one of them. So this is a little bit of a taste of the Green School Bali. It is, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. It's such a magical place. So let me take you through insights here. First of all, I just want to say that I was really motivated to do this research because I'm, first of all, a huge animal lover, but also my research is in the backdrop of the Anthropocene. And some of these ideas have already been mentioned. We're living in a human-dominated world where human attitudes and behaviours are literally changing our world and not in good ways. And so I started thinking about this and thinking, well, how can education respond to the challenges of life in the Anthropocene? And I encountered another term, and it's called the necrocene. And this is from a researcher called Justin McBrien. He proposes the necrocene as a challenge to the Anthropocene, because what he argues is that we are living in times that are saturated with death. This is a bit gloomy. He would say, considering the amount of species that are becoming extinct, considering the amount of biodiversity loss, the breakdown of certain systems, climate-induced disasters, spiraling socio-economic injustices all over the world. And of course, the most vulnerable are suffering the most. And so the necrocene is a response to this rampant death toll that we are all witnessing. And how often do we actually consider that? So my research is in response to that. And I have been creating my own methodology in my time at the Green School Bali, and I'm calling them multi-species moments. And this fits beautifully with tonight's focus on stories, because what multi-species moments are tiny stories between animals and children in this particular international school. So this is a relational methodology because conceptually, multi-species means that we're not just interconnected with animals or more than humans, we are enmeshed, we are entangled with them, and we actually co-produce one another. I heard on a podcast tonight that the oak tree in the UK is actually in reciprocal relationships with 2,300 other life worlds. Isn't that phenomenal? 2,300. And actually, we as humans, when we consider the parasites that are living on our skin and the bacteria and the microbes, we are outnumbered. Our human cells are outnumbered. We are literally walking ecosystems. And so this idea that our skin is a boundary to others is nonsense. We are always entangled with a multitude of others, and that's really what multi-species is all about. So how are we responding to that? So I've tried to kind of conceptualize this into 5 rhizomatic threads. And I'm very inspired by the bamboo, which is just so tangled and rhizomatic. It really helps me to think. So my multi-species moments, when I'm researching with children and animals, they are always attentional. So we're not thinking about our brain processing what's happening and being curious and asking questions. Quite often, these multi-species moments are noticed before they're even considered. And so there is a responsive and alertness to the ways that we encounter others in our environments. Multi-species moments are co-produced and imminent. Now, I work and I research with post-humanism. So just to explain a little bit there, that I, as the researcher, I'm also a participant, because I'm not standing aside from my research. I am in the research with the children, with the animals, and together we are creating data. I'm not standing on the outside with a clipboard and writing down numbers and things that I observe. We produce the multi-species moments together, and not often in ways that we're fully aware of at the time. Multi-species moments are temporal, fleeting, and mundane, because they pass, linger, recur, and register within the ordinary and the everyday. So when I mean multi-species moments, this is not like an event like going to a zoo or going to do conservation at the mangroves. They are kind of bigger events. Multi-species moments are ordinary, typical happenstance encounters between children and animals, things that we might take for granted. And because they're temporal, they might be in our memories. They might be in our stories and our hopes for the future. And they're fleeting, which means they happen quickly. And we have to be attentional to that. Multi-species moments are expressive and material because they involve an element of creativity in order to express. And they're not reduced to human language. Clearly, animals don't use the same language as we humans do. So therefore, we have to think about how we're creating or how we are in these moments with animals through images, through sounds, through movements and materials. They must go beyond linguistic or symbolic capture. And I'm working with all sorts of interesting things like putting microphones into the soil and listening to all the life that is under our feet that we never even think twice about. Multi-species moments are world opening because they create new relations. And that's really what I'm interested in. If we are going to move into post-anthropocentric worlds, if we are going to address so many of the traumas and the destruction that we are witness to in these times of necrocene, how are we noticing others? What new relations, what alternative relations are emerging? And what are these ethical openings that question how we are sensing our worlds, how we are inhabiting them and making them, and not thinking about tidying them up with closure and mastery and it's all done. We're thinking about unfolding and opening. So what I'm going to do now is read 3 multi-species moments, and I'm not going to analyse them. I'm just going to read them, and I've put a few questions on the slides, and I invite you to have a think. These were multi-species moments with animals and children, and this is the methodology in practice, if you like. The first one is called Becoming with Dog, and this was from my research journal. 6th of October. A small young dog staggered onto campus. His skin was red raw and bloodied. His ears were down, his tail was down, his eyes were sad. I thought he was going to collapse and die right in front of me. I talked to him in a soft voice, trying to beckon him over to me so that I might help him. I was worried that the security officers might shoo him away or that the children might be scared of his ragged appearance. He was untouchable, possibly traumatized by previous interactions with humans. I shared his image in one community WhatsApp group, parents who I know are sympathetic to such causes because I know not everyone is. The stray dog situation in Bali is a daily reminder of multi-species spectres, and being here on the school campus with him, multi-species death felt close. 15th of October, we gave the dog a name, Kuat, which means strong in Bahasa Indonesia. Kuat's name gave him protection from death. We noticed him, which meant his life and death mattered. Between a group of parents, we tracked Kuat around the local area, sending videos and images with time and location as updates. Fortunately for us, this emaciated dog always made an appearance at lunchtimes, staying close to the scraps of sustenance generated by the campus. 24th of October, after just 18 days of regular feeds, medication and love, Kuat's ears and tail stand up proudly. Kuat now lives in the streets around school. He's part of a pack that is fed daily by a local volunteer, and he now steps confidently onto campus, allowing his chin to be stroked. Children and young people watch us adults care. How might caring for one life make a difference to an ecosystem? And how might we care when we think that no one is watching? Becoming with Duck. In an instant, she knew exactly which animal she wanted to show the group. Hair flowing, arms powering, feet clattering over the rocky footpath, she set off with urgency. I could see where she was heading, and I knew there was a pond inside that pen. I quickened my pace and called her name. No response. Without a moment's hesitation, I watched as she disappeared into the pen. I caught up with her, hearing her elation before seeing it. "Here is my favourite animal," she announced with pride. I saw that she was squatting on the other side of the pond, clutching a large white duck to her chest. Her face was sheer joy, which made me smile fleetingly. I looked a little closer at the duck. It was quacking, waddling its webbed feet in mid-air and trying so hard to flex its wings in her tight embrace, struggling. An ethical research dilemma. I did not know whether I should intervene. The human child, the participant on my consent form, was fine after all. "Did that duck give you permission to hold it?" I asked. Eyes widening, the smile dropped off her face, her mouth turning to a big O, as she looked from me to the duck and back at me in slow motion. "No," she murmured in quiet contemplation. A moment later, she gently placed the duck on the ground, stood up and watched as it waddled away, still quacking. She made an ethical decision to release the duck. We crouched down together in the moist soil, watching, pointing, talking, giggling. Duck chose to remain nearby. This moment of becoming with Duck created the conditions for a richly meandering conversation about a faraway life growing up in the Swiss Alps. We talked and we laughed. An unanticipated research moment. For the girl, Duck was tangled up with ideas, memories, feelings for home, grandma, childhood, friendship, all complex issues for a third culture kid. And I questioned, who will care for Duck on this campus? And how do our relations with animals trouble those perceived home-school boundaries? Because for children, I'm sensing that there isn't a boundary. Third one. Brandon wanted to get a drink and trailed behind the rest of the group. From the corner of my eye, I watched Cassius run over towards him, and they started gesturing wildly with their arms and facial expressions. They noticed a huge spider on a huge web that was elegantly draped between a tree and a stall selling drinks. I looked at them and they beckoned me over to show me the animal they found. There was excitement and admiration because of its size. The other boys in the group gathered around to look as well. The girls carried on walking ahead. Brandon started wiggling and tugging at the web to get the spider to move. I felt myself wincing. Camille and Cassius didn't touch the web, but carried on watching. Cassius seemed knowledgeable. The female is there too, and she's smaller. Brandon had a lot of energy rippling through his body in this moment, and I became so worried that he might accidentally break the web or disturb the spider. Would the spider then jump on one of us? Would it end up getting trodden on? Is it poisonous? I made the ethical decision to intervene. If you keep wiggling the cobweb, you might break it. And that spider might have spent a long time making it. Brandon then stopped and said, "Oh yeah," and we all walked away. So how might we, as educators, leverage experiential learning whilst at the same time maintaining our responsibilities towards others? And what do these practices of caring invite for us all? And so for educators, what might tiny moments on a school campus between animals and children show us about education moving forward? What I'm finding is that we need to do so much more tuning in. We need to think about how our bodies are responding, our emotions, how we're using our senses. We were designed with ears for a reason, and a nose and skin. How is education allowing us to use these capacities in order to learn? We need to look around more, not looking ahead, not worrying about progress, not looking at grades and statistics and exam results and what we're going to do for a job and which university we're going to. We need to slow down and we need to look around a little bit more, a lot more. We need to really notice, because once we've tuned in and looked around, how are we all meeting the worlds and futures right now? Where are we meeting? And notice I've pluralized worlds and futures. We live in many worlds and we live in many futures right now. We need more art. We need to have more speculation. If we're going to be addressing these big issues like climate change, like ecosystem ill health, we need our imaginative capacities to imagine how we might do things differently. I'm going to be political here. We need less maths, less 5-paragraph essays, and we need more art, more imagination, more speculation, because what this does is this unfolds more relationships, more ways of doing things differently. We don't need to cut our arts. We need slow pedagogies, slow learning, slow scholarship from our universities. When I talk about some of these things, it feels really niche. And yet, as we've heard tonight, this isn't really niche. This is what we already know. This is connecting our ancient wisdoms with what we are finding out now through areas such as quantum physics. Okay? Slow pedagogy, slow learning, slow noticing, slow scholarship. And finally, and perhaps the most importantly here, we are saturated in ethical dilemmas. If we are noticing, if we are tuning in, so what? How are we caring? How are we caring differently? How might we care in alternative ways with the aliveness of this life? We don't want to be in the necroscene, saturated with death. We want to be breathing in the aliveness of life, the aliveness of our worlds. So how are we going to do that? And maybe tiny multi-species moments, living and learning in the cracks, are one way in which we might do this. Thank you.
Mm. Mm. Thank you so much, Charlotte. So, Manuel, I'm going to take a moment to put some music on for people to, I guess, to ingest and digest what they've just heard. And then you'll give us directions with regards to the breakout room.
Okay, David. Thank you.
Okay.
We don't hear the music, David.
Oh, oh, goodness.
So just like last time, you'll have to sing.
Oh, wait a minute. It's not in my contract. Let me just see what happened here.
Yeah. In the meantime, just to let
Yeah,
you know, as
please.
digesting that we are a bit behind. Okay. So the meeting might go over perhaps 10, 15 minutes. So yeah, just for you to know.
David, I think singing is always in your social contract.
Absolutely, Charles. Am I imagining that I'm the only one hearing this right now?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, it's lovely music, yeah.
You can imagine. Yeah. So so what we're going to do now is we are going to go gently to into breakout rooms, and in those breakout rooms, I will have about 15 minutes. 2 minutes before the end, we will receive a message to remind us there are 2 minutes left. So the idea for this breakout room, we asked you before to take some notes, to share some idea, is to make sure that everybody speaks at least once before anyone speaks twice. We'll ask you to choose a gardener in each breakout room. The gardener is someone who will share the main insight in the plenary afterwards, okay? And to do so, we're going to guide you with a prompt, okay? We're going to put the prompts in the chat, but it is the following. Based on what you've just heard, the three guests, okay? What story do you have about education that was interrupted today? And what new one is emerging in your mind? So I'm just going to place this question in the chat if it hasn't been done yet.
It's there.
Okay, there you go. You got it twice. Okay. So Amanda, whenever you want, you can take us to our breakout rooms. If you want to write down the question, right.
I'm finishing up the breakout rooms.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amanda.
Yeah. Okay. See you soon.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the land of unfinished conversations. Oh, yes. Let's reconnect little by little. So as we told you before, we are already a bit over time, but we really would like to hear some voices, the voices of the gardeners, about some insight you'd like to share from from your group conversation. I mean, in mine, so many things were shared, so many things happened, but yeah. So,
Emmanuel,
who-
if I
yes,
may,
sure.
I'll go. It was a fascinating conversation because we started with necroticism, necrocene, and ended up with Beauty and the Beast. So here we go. I hope I do it justice. Um, John mentioned about the fact that we were saturated in ethical dilemmas, and we have that Deepak captured the urgency of the moment, and we talked about death and necrocene, what Charlotte had talked about, and then we discussed the fact that although death is around us everywhere, we don't talk about it in the classroom, and we don't talk, and that would be ideal to bring in nature and with children as young as kindergarten, preschool, dead leaves, the fall, a dead caterpillar, and discuss death. So that was a topic that we really went into. Um, Amy mentioned that we ourselves are causing the death of species, and that we were destroying uh, species, land, etc., waters. We talked about the stories that wouldn't it be wonderful if we also told stories in our classrooms with an open-ended, with not necessarily an end of the story, but to have the children create their ending of the stories. And I mentioned to them in the places that I'm working with, in the spaces that I'm working with, the schools in India and a school in Georgia, there's such need to educate the children, to bring them at a level of math understanding and reading understanding that it would be a huge challenge, let's say, to have educators weave in nature, but yet it doesn't have to be. Uh, Somehow we have to instill in our educators the courage and the confidence that it can be done in very small steps, like the beautiful plant I see behind you, Emmanuel. It doesn't have to be this huge, it doesn't have to be a field trip to a huge whatever. It could just be bringing a plant or an animal into the classroom and weaving into it to the curriculum you're already covering. That it can't be like an afterthought. It could just be woven in. Uh, Yes, and somehow we started talking about storytelling, which is my fairy tales, which is my favorite thing. I'm very passionate about, and we ended up talking about beauty and why is that always important, and Beauty and the Prince and the prince. And then, anyway, we deviated, so we will have a conversation aside on that topic of fairy tales. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Marta.
Carolyn Edwards is, oh, good. Somebody else going?
You got it, Carolyn.
Okay, great. I was with the group with Usha and Cutie and Charlotte, and there was someone who was leading the group. I forgot to, David. Okay, so the sharing, Usha was shared that she was interested in the nature as teaching and the human element, that's the connection of the human element, nature, caring for the animals. And she was also concerned about us drifting away from nature and making sure that we have a relationship with our surroundings. Beauty spoke on the environment, education being environment focused. And Charlotte was very impressed with, and I too, with the mural paintings as part of the storytelling. And being a theater arts teacher, which I love teaching theater because it brings everything together. The painting on those buildings, they tell such stories. That goes all the way back to ancient times, right? With the hieroglyphics telling the stories. So that was, we all was pretty on the same page with that. Also, when Charlotte shared about the love and care of nature, I was thinking on my own healing journey, and when I go to help my friends, that care that you give, that's just as important as the medicine. Okay, so because I'll be honest, when I'm listening, I say, okay, so where does math come in and where does science? My brain is going back to the schedule. It has to be done in these blocks. But when you have that kid, you realize that the love is just important as the medicine. That's science, and so that was something I found very interesting. Also, the AI, when it came to storybooks, we have to bring in, we have to, as a mature teacher, just to make sure that I'm keep learning. It has to be a lifelong, when I first started, it has to be a lifelong process, this learning and finding different ways and appreciating nature, making it real, making it home. And that's all I'm going to share because I know other people want to share.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Thank you so much. Yes, Jane, you're raising your hand. You are on mute, yeah.
Yes,
There you go.
from group 4, one thread was that this was not an interruption, but a confirmation of the work that each of us is doing. Mark shared about his work around sexuality for developmentally disabled people in New Mexico. 100% of them wanted love, and it was problematic for them to find love, and his methodology was to face the trauma that they have long enough to turn the fear into awe. I thought that was really stunning. And then from his own personal life, he shared an example of his own stepchild finding that in community at camp. Charles talked about darning the socks of the universe, stitching things back together, interweaving reciprocal relations, and did another quote from Robin Wall Kimmerer, which is stunning. Of course, each breath is thanks to plants. Very important quote. Sherry spoke again to us, thankfully, about the image that education for the indigenous has been totally interrupted, but in fact, it's rooted in the land and the people. And later, she spoke about what it is to be a person of color walking today, having to carry a birth certificate and for herself and her grandchild. And so that is interruption. Emmanuel talked about how to find the center in intergenerational work and a deep responsibility for children right now, not in the future, but I thought about my grandchildren when you spoke, Emmanuel, and how to be even more in the now with them, no matter where they come from on, the various spectrums that they're on. And you talked about slowing down the rhythm of life so that we can even notice. And then I spoke about Substack I published last night about Minnesota, and the fact that I learned that the murder of Philandro Castillo, of George Floyd, and of these two most recent murders of white allies was all within a 5-mile radius. And so I started to really think this is a vortex, and Fort Snelling, near where the Dakota were put in concentration camps in the 1860s, and where Abraham Lincoln mandated the largest mass hanging still in US history of Dakota men who had rebelled. And that the land is asking us, as Deepak said, the land is calling to us to answer in reparation to the wounds of the land. And so I love the idea of moving slowly through trauma and fear into awe, that that we need to recognize that all of this is happening in the same spot. What does it mean for us? What does it mandate? Thank you.
Mm.
Thank you so much, Jane. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else would like to share?
I could go for our group. Am I muted? No, I'm not.
No, you're good, Tom. We hear
Good.
you.
Okay.
You're a man in shadow.
So there's been so much to take in today, and I just couldn't take notes on everything that everybody said. So I'll just speak mainly from my thinking or my experience. I'm an elder. I'm 83 years old, and I have young grandchildren, 2 babies just born, 2 little boys, and then grandchildren ages 2, 5, and 7. And so what resonated for me, well, the story that perhaps is interrupted is the idea that as an elder, I have wisdom to pass down. But I love the idea of that Deepak spoke to about wisdom being passed around rather than passed down. And so I think it's going to subtly change the way I relate to my grandchildren, whether they're the 5-month-olds that I hold and sing to in the night and during the day, or the 2, 5, and 7-year-olds, just to elicit and listen to their stories and let that trigger what stories I want to share with them. I also love the idea of the grandfathers sitting around the fire, and every night they have to tell a different story. But I think I'll do it a little different, which is to take off from their stories and see what makes sense, and looking forward to learning from them as well as sharing with them whatever wisdom I have to share.
Thank you, Tom.
Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you very much to all the gardeners for sharing beautiful insights. Shall I, because we wish we could all be together in the same space, I mean, face to face, and continue this long conversation. And we have to come to a close to this session. So we'd like to invite you to explain how we could follow up or continue those conversations. So I'm going to share briefly. Okay. Yes. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So choose your contribution path. How to continue this conversation. First, we invite you. I mean, somebody's going to share our email in the chat. Any question you have, any doubt, please write to us and we'll answer as soon as possible. So the first way is to plant a seed. So it's more like an individual contribution. You would like to share a short reflection about today's session or last session and today, and send it to us. So that would be the first way to participate, the first step, planting that seed. The second one we call to join a garden. So you are willing to have a conversation with people here or other people to meet between 2 salons around a specific theme. So the same, you get in touch with us and we help you organize this meetup group about a specific conversation to exchange experiences and also explores way to collaborate. And finally, we can also invite you to become a caretaker. Help us to facilitate a space, to find other spaces and see how we can connect them together. Okay, so this is more like taking on a light stewardship role. Okay, so we're going to share this image with you. And any question you have, please send us an email. And now, before I pass the baton to you, John, I would like to ask you two questions, and you can say answer to our emails or now in the chat. So two questions. From today's session, what seed do you take with you? So what seed do you take with you? That's the first question. And the second question is, what will you water in the next 30 days? Okay. So two questions. You can answer in the chat or get back to us later on and through the email. I'll share it. Yeah. The questions are on the chat. Yeah, the seed of healing, David. Yes, much needed. Yeah, slow learning, slow noticing, absolutely. Slowing down to the rhythm of life. Yeah, yes. The seed of collecting relevant, local, current wisdom. The seed of listening, absolutely. So I'm just saturated in ethical dilemmas. Caring for a stray dog is an act of love. Thank you, Carol. I hadn't considered that. Loves come in many forms, absolutely. Well, I invite you to read all these messages. And John, please, over to you.
So, our next salon is going to be in 3 weeks, and it's going to be on February 21st. And again, it'll be from 8:30 till 10 on a Saturday Eastern time. And we're going to have 3 more amazing speakers, of whom Tom Roderick is one who's here with us today. It's going to be Deb L. Morrison, who is a learning designer and advisor at the University of Washington. And she's a member of the International Panel on Climate Change. And she's the lead author on the 7th assessment report, which is the current assessment report in Working Group 1, which is the UN body for assessing the science related to climate change, and examining the physical science underpinning the past, present, and future climate change. And Tom Roderick, who's the author of Teach for Climate Justice, A Vision for Transforming Education. And he was also the founding executive director of the Morningside Center for Teaching Social Responsibility. And then finally, Carrie Kirk Fugue, who is the executive director of the New Jersey, it's Flug. My apologies, Carrie, even though you're not able to be here today. The executive director of the New Jersey School of Conservation, and it also comes with many years of experience at the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. So one of the things is that several people have already started networks out of the last group, and we hope that people will feel free to join them. Marta is one of the people who's involved in that. Jane is one of the people who's involved in that. And so people should feel free either to start new ones and or to join those. And we really want to emphasize if people can fill out the feedback form. It's a brief form, but it's really helpful for us. For example, this meeting, we expanded the breakout room, even though we knew we were going to have 3 speakers instead of only 2. And we're going to use your feedback in shaping the next session. So we take it very, very seriously. And we are also forming a WhatsApp group that everybody's welcome to join in. Basically, what we're saying is we don't want these only to be sessions, no matter how valuable and interesting they are, but we really want to help people connect from literally all over the world and figure out how what each of us is doing can feed in with what everyone else is doing. So thanks. Excuse me for my cough. But thanks to our speakers today who were just mind-boggling. I think that's the technical term. And thanks also to everybody who's participated and contributed. And please share with your friends and colleagues and tell people to come and join. So thank you.
So can I just add that the importance of the feedback form, if we have that link in the chat so that people can begin to do it while they're still with us.
And yes, Amanda has just joined that. Just
All right,
added
great.
that.
And likewise, our email, to make sure that we have our email in the chat. That would be great.
And you're going to send out the feedback form like you did in an email this time? That's easier for me.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Absolutely.
The question, how can I save the chat?
If you go to the three, you'll see three dots at the top right, I believe, of your chat. Three dots. And if you find the three dots, there will be an option to save the chat to your computer.
And I just wanted to add that we ran over, as everybody knows. And on the one hand, we apologize for that. On the other hand, I, at any rate, think it was well worth it. And really want to add thanks to everybody who stayed on beyond what your plans for the morning or afternoon or evening were. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Take
Please
good
see you
care.
again, Charlotte. Gracias, Emmanuel.
Muchísimas gracias.
Entonces, chao.
Ciao, Marta.
Chao, David.
Thank you for the beautiful experience.
Thank you for being here, Usha.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Quite interesting.
Thank you, Yudi. And Charlene, good to see you and hope you feel better.
And Charlene, we will have a recording. We'll send to everybody on their emails and post on our LinkedIn and on our YouTube channel. So you
Great.
get a link to it.
Okay, great. I'm so sorry I missed it, but quite under the weather today.
Great background, Amanda.
We'll give you one for you, David.